Yeah! 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 With the Poochie! With the Poochie! Who's that?
This is Akira.
Akira?
Mm-hmm.
Akira.
Do your kids like anime?
It's a Japanese name. She's a Havanese, and Akira. There was more to her name than that. It means intelligent princess in Japanese.
Looks like a suiting name.
Yeah, I like that. Where we left off, you mentioned, and I really like this, that there is no time, there is no space. The entire thing is a simulation, and then later we'll get into how the simulation has rules, and you evolve, which makes it very much like a video game.
Mm-hmm.
But
I didn't say that there's no time.
Okay, no time. Okay.
I said there is time. Time's fundamental.
Okay.
If you don't have time, you can't have change.
Gotcha.
If you don't have time, nothing's dynamic. Nothing moves. Nothing happens.
Right.
It's just whatever it is. It just stays there. Time without time, it's very boring.
Gotcha.
There's no process.
Okay.
So you need time. Time's very fundamental. Space is not fundamental at all. Space is just a calculation in the computer.
Wow.
Right.
So,
time probably applies to LCS. It's way more fundamental than space.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Space is just a calculation in the computer, just like the space that's in the World of Warcraft.
Gotcha.
There's the space over to the mountains and between the trees, and it's all that space in there. Where is that space? There is no space. It's just a calculation in the computer. That's the way our space is. Space is not fundamental at all, but time is.
Sure.
Okay, so
you
hear that a lot. There's no time. There's no space. Everything's simultaneous. It's all happening at once.
Yeah.
This is not like that. That's a common misconception of the way I guess time is really very fundamental.
Okay.
And if you don't have time, you don't have consciousness.
Gotcha. All right. So but for example, like the experience I have, at least through my eyes, is that Max is here, and there's a distance between us.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to ask you next is that, all right, if that's an illusion in the simulation, where are we really?
We are consciousness. Okay? We're non-physical. We don't have physical. We're not a physical thing. At least that's our view. This physical, non-physical is really it's relative. It's not physical and non-physical is not really real either. They're kind of depends on the observer, where the observer is as to what's physical and what's not physical. Mm-hmm. So, but from our viewpoint here, consciousness is non-physical.
Gotcha.
So when I say it's non-physical, there's no fundamental meaning there other than it's not what we call physical here.
Gotcha.
So that's what we are. So where are you? Again, think of World of Warcraft. Okay. Now you have characters there, and their space is separated, and if they reach out, if they're going to punch each other, they have to reach out and do that, right? I mean, it's very similar to the way it is right now between you two. Right? They can get farther apart. They can get close together. There's space between them. There's mass in the sense that you hit something, and it's not until you actually get to their body that you get a result, right? Because that's their simulated mass. They sink in the water. They get hurt if they jump off of cliffs, fall far enough. There's gravity. You get all the same kind of stuff, and where's that stuff come from? Well, it's just data, right? It's just information. So that's where it comes from. Same place it comes from here. So yes, you two are sitting there, and you can reach out and shake him, and he seems very real and whatever. But so does your World of Warcraft. He takes his sword and he reaches out and he strikes the monster, and the monster growls and falls over. And what's the difference? You see, this is just a more detail. We have more pixels here. We're doing a much higher fidelity. We have much more resolution, so it's more real. As look at the graphics that were in the multiplayer games 15 years ago, right, or 20 years ago.
Right. They
were little rigid kind of stick figure people that right, like little box people with eyes and happy faces on them and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now look where it is. You see. Well, now let's say we do that 100 times over again and again. Well, Now, when you reach out, it's not just going to be that your sword kind of hits where the guy is, but you'll actually be just like the two of you. You know, you can reach out and push your finger on his shoulder and it dents in a little bit and you can feel the bone underneath. And, you know, that's just a matter of detail. You know, there's not, it's not particularly different than World of Warcraft. It's just higher fidelity. Delta T is a lot faster and the pixel size is a lot smaller. So it's a similar kind of thing. So that's why, you know, those characters inside of World of Warcraft, you know, they feel solid. You know, they live in a place with green grass and trees and flying lions and teleporting machines and all sorts of things. And that's just their world. They live in it and they work with it and they deal with it. They can't breathe underwater. You know, they can't fall but so you know, from such high distance without being hurt. They get killed, and when they get killed, they end up in a graveyard and have to run back to the battle. You know, it's just that way that reality works. So it's not, you know, it's like how come, you know, why are we this solid? Why are we these solid things? And, you know, how can this be a simulation? And, well, it's just, you know, imagine yourself being a character in World of Warcraft. What is their world like? How do they view their world? Do they not view it as solid? Is that not physical reality to them? And who are you? Where do you exist in their physical reality? You're not in their physical reality. You're non-physical. Mm-hmm. You see? You're not in their physical reality. You're a non-physical being. Oh, probably none of those World of Warcraft characters believe in non-physical beings. You know, they think that's all silly, you know. But that's what makes them swing or jump or run or whatever they do. You're sitting over with a mouse. Mm-hmm. And you're clicking on different things. You're pushing buttons and joysticks, and they jump or they run or they swing or they dance or they do whatever they do because you're putting inputs to it. And the two elves are sitting in World of Warcraft talking to each other, and they say, you know, what do you mean consciousness? You know, where is that consciousness anyway? Well, here we are, and we're in the physical world. Don't tell me this nonsense about some non-physical world where there's consciousness that are working joysticks and mice and, you know, having us do the things we do. You know, we're in charge here. Right? What's the difference? You see, it's the same thing. So it seems like we're in charge here, but this is just a better model.
Gotcha. Well, what would you say the equivalent is with like the larger consciousness system or the consciousness that's running this computation? Like, I kind of get this image of, you know, Om or LCS in a void, self-computing itself, making these simulations and running them. But what about that plane? What about that place where it's LCS, where it's just consciousness? It doesn't seem to have a where. It seems to be like self. How would you describe that dimension?
Well, that's what I say, that where. See, what you want to do, what your brain and your habits and your beliefs are trying to do is to make it into a place. Everything has a place, right? I mean, here we are in the universe, you know, and you're sitting in a house and you got this, you know, this reddish orange couch behind you. You got a room and somebody's been doing stuff on the wall there. And
looks like
you've got this place and everybody lives in a place. Everybody has to exist in a place. And nothing can exist without a place. You see, that's the concept of a physical reality. And when you're in a physical reality, that's just the way it seems to you. That's the way it seems to those two elves that are sitting on that tree stump having a chat about metaphysics, you know, in their game. And and somebody says, well, where are these beings with the joysticks and the things? I don't get it. What place are they in? You see?
Very good, very good. Gotcha.
Well, you're not in their place. You're not in their reality. And they say, well, they're non-physical. Well, now here you are with your hand on the joystick and you feel physical,
right?
But you're not physical to them. And hey, they're not physical to you. You see? They're just data. You know that, but they haven't figured that out yet. Okay? But now the next level up, you haven't figured out yet that you're just data, so you want to put it in a place, you see? You want it to be a physical, solid thing that takes up space.
Right.
Well, if it's not a physical, solid thing that takes up space, then it doesn't exist. That's the way we're programmed to believe. That's a fundamental belief that we have here because that's the kind of reality that we're in. And that's why it's so difficult for people to get it, if you will, because you have to shift that paradigm away that we don't live in a physical space. We're just data and information, just like the two elves sitting on a tree stump having a conversation, much like our conversation. You see, and they want to know, well, where is that space? You know, it's not in their universe. Well, what else is there besides the universe? Who knows? That's all we know is the universe. What's on the other side? I mean, what's beyond the universe? How do they know? What kind of experiment do those World of Warcraft characters do that takes them into your living room? You see? They can't do that. They can't go there. They just don't know. All they know is that sometimes they just feel like dancing. You know? Other times they feel like fighting. It's just the way they are. You know?
Love that.
It's so it, you know, of course theirs is a very crude game, right, compared to ours. But that's just the way it is. And to them there is no other place that you could describe to it. So how could one of those elves tell the other about the place that there's these two guys with joysticks and monitors, you know, making them dance or fight, you know, wanting them to do that, pulling their strings. And they say, what do you mean we're just puppets? We don't do anything here. And you say, well, no, you're an avatar of that person. That person there on that joystick, that's who you really are, you see. You're just an avatar. You don't even exist. Your body isn't even real. It's just data. This physical reality isn't even real, Elfie. It's just data, you see. The real you is that person with the joystick. That's your consciousness. All right, well, where are they?
Right.
You see? What space are they in?
Right.
See the problem?
Yeah.
So what does the elf who gets it tell the other one that doesn't to let them know where they are?
Right.
See? They're not anywhere that I can tell you. You know, they're not in this reality. They're in some other reality. And we call that non-physical, even though they think it's physical, but it's non-physical to them, and it's not in their universe. It's off the map. They're not on the World of Warcraft map. They're elsewhere. They're in other, as Fredkin says, you see?
Right.
So it's that same thing. We're in that same thing. So when you say, well, where is this consciousness actually? That's you with the belief that it has to be somewhere in the universe. You know, if I said, well, it's all on the dark side of the moon, that's where all the consciousness lives, you know, then you say, oh, okay, now I can get it. Now I can compute it. The consciousness all lives on the dark side of the moon. But, you know, well, they're all, you know, they're ETs, you know, they're from other planets. Oh, okay, you can get that. But when they're just other, they're not in this reality frame. It's someplace else. Yeah, but where is that other place else? Well, we just can't talk about that because we don't have the tools, the concepts. It's just some non-physical place to us.
The subset, trying to describe the superset.
To consciousness, it may be perfectly physical in its own perception of itself. That's its reality. In our perception, you know, it's non-physical. Same with our dreams. Our dreams, from our perception, seem to be not physical. Because this is the real reality. That dream reality is kind of a synthetic reality. We just make that up in our brains, right? It isn't real. It's just as real as this one.
Fascinating.
It's just more data. It's just as virtual as this one. You know, there's really no difference. So you see the problem. If you kind of make that parallel between the elves in the video game and us, you see it's hard to answer that question. Well, where is that? You know, where is that consciousness? Tell me where it is. Well, all I can tell you is that it's not in this universe. It's outside. This is a virtual reality. And when you're there in that reality seems physical, and this one does not. So you, with your hand on a joystick, you feel physical, but your elf whom you are controlling does not. And when he says, oh, I just feel like dancing now,
Right.
That's because his consciousness, you, decided it'd be fun if I let me watch this guy dance. You know, these elves, they do really the coolest dance. Look at this. You see, so it's because you, the consciousness, are basically his avatar. He doesn't really exist. His consciousness exists, though. That's why he's animated. Well, you as a physical body don't really exist either, but your consciousness exists. That's why you're animated. You see? But this consciousness isn't just playing a game for laughs.
Right.
So it doesn't make you dance just because that would be fun to watch you do a silly dance. It's trying to grow up. It's got a serious job. It's trying to evolve. So it's playing this game in a serious way. It's trying to make the best moves it can and so on, because this is its job. This is what it does. It evolves. So it's a more serious game. And so that's you. Who are you? You're the consciousness. But this body is kind of the consciousness's avatar for playing the game. You see, why the game? Because the consciousness can't do it by itself.
Okay.
Why do you play World of Warcraft? Because you can't fight monsters by yourself in your reality. There aren't any monsters in your reality. There aren't any berserkers and, flying lions or any of that stuff. You can't experience any of that stuff here, but you can there. And suddenly you have all these decisions to make and life and death struggles and all sorts of other things you do in the game, and you learn from that. But you can't do that, You don't want a lot of life and death struggles in your consciousness, in your life here. You want to be serene with your joystick, you see, doing what you do. You don't want to have, monsters, coming into your apartment, right, tearing things up, and you need to get your magic sword out to get them. Right. That's the thing you can experience in the virtual reality. Make decisions, learn the game, learn what it takes, learn the kind of moves you have to make to be successful. That's what you're doing. But meanwhile, you're here, you're the consciousness. It's the avatar. Well, just take that up a step. Your consciousness is the avatar to your physical body, but it's not just playing, it's a serious game to it. So it plays you, and as you run into circumstances, it's your intent. It's its intent. Yeah. So what's your intention? Your intention is to make this video, and in making this video, you're doing this interview, and you've got this thread running in your life, things you're doing, things you're trying to whatever, and you're growing from that. It's something you want to do. You're helping other people. You make this video, and a lot more people will get things that they don't get now. So you're trying to do that. You're also having fun. You're also learning and growing yourself. You've got this thing going. Okay, well, that's what your consciousness is doing. It's playing your character, and as stuff happens, as you happen to meet, an elf on the road, you sit down on a stump and have a talk. So you interact with the story as the story unfolds, which is exactly what your consciousness. So who are you? You're the consciousness. You're not the body. But see, we identify with the body. And I run into all sorts of people that they say, yeah, that's nice, my conscience goes on, but what about me?
Right.
I don't like this. This game sucks. What about me? I want to go on forever too. You see? And it's like, how do you talk to somebody like that? You see, you just kind of, you try not to roll your eyes, but it's the wrong question. You see, it's the wrong view. They're coming from a belief about reality, and they want to survive, death, which means they want their body to survive death. Well, that's an oxymoron. You see, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. They don't understand that the real them, what they really are, is not this virtual body that's just information. It's the consciousness, and the consciousness does survive. But they don't want that for an answer. They said, no, okay, that's that consciousness thing survives. I don't care about that. What about me? I want to survive. Me. You see, me, Tom Campbell, the guy that does this and that, and, has a little white dog, and I want to survive. Right. They want their identity to survive.
They're mistaken.
And that's not the way it works. Your consciousness is what's real. This body and this virtual reality is not real. It's a learning place. So you see, that's kind of maybe puts it in context. If you look at the video game and see how that structure works, and you put yourself in the same thing, then suddenly it makes sense. We're in this video game. We're not the real deal. We're just virtual bodies, avatars for a consciousness that has hold of our joystick and the mouse there, and basically is using its intent to have us make the decisions that we make. And that's what you're doing with your elf. You make the decisions for that elf, what to do. Do I go on this quest or not? Do I fight this battle or do I run away? What do I do? How do I grow? Do I work for this spell or this thing, or do I not? And you have a strategy. You kind of know where you're trying to go. You're trying to raise your level. You're trying to maybe get more gold or more whatever. You're developing your character. You have goals, and then you work toward those goals, and you make decisions based on getting toward those goals that you've set. Well, you're doing the same thing now. You've got goals. You're making a movie. You're doing things. There's decisions to make, and your consciousness and both of you, your consciousness are interplaying or interacting with each other. You're on this path, and your intents are animating your characters. So your consciousness, and you live in other. You're not here, but you're growing. And this is just one character. When this character's gone, you'll get another one. How many elves has you had, or how many necromancers or berserkers or whatever else you've got in those kinds of games. How many of those have you had? Probably a dozen. Why? Well, it's interesting to play it from different perspectives, isn't it? You can be on the good side or the bad side, or all sorts of sides. You can have strong brutes, or you can have clever, wizards that aren't very strong. And there's all sorts of ways to play the game, and each one of them has its own strategy and its own style, and the things it can do and the things that it can't do and its limitations. And how well you play it is more important, really, than the character you play. That's the way it is here. You see, it's not about, well, what about me, my body? Well, your body really isn't that important. It's how you play the character that's really important. It's not so much even what happens to the character. It's not whether a monster jumps out at you, when you're playing World of Warcraft, that's important. It's how you deal with it, right? It's how you play that monster once it jumps out. There's enough play and enough characters wandering around that all kinds of things are going to happen to you. There'll be some other character that all he lives for is to go around bashing other people, and you'll have to deal with that character. And there's bosses and, super monsters and other things, issues. Now you've got to run all the way to the other side of the map in order to, fetch something and come back. And you have to plot a strategy. How am I going to get there? Am I going to ride a flying lion? Am I going to run? And et cetera, et cetera. So you plan, you work on your goals, you deal with whatever constraints that you have to deal with. So what's different? What's different than being here? It's the same sort of thing. We just have a very high-res game, so you don't notice that the fact that the grass is actually little, blades of grass rather than just a green carpet, like it is in a low-res thing. But that's just technology. That doesn't really matter very much. That's just better technology. So that's kind of the way these things work. So it's just other. It's out there. It's consciousness. It's the player with the mouse and the joystick that's playing this body through this interaction with other characters, making decisions. And as you make good decisions, you grow up. You decrease your entropy. You raise the quality of your consciousness, and that's the game. It's not, it's not getting more hit points. It's getting a higher quality of consciousness. That's what you're supposed to do. That's the point of this game. So it depends on how you go about it. So you need to be doing things that are growing yourself. And that's why it only matters what you do at the being level. Talk about the being level and the intellectual level. The intellectual level is almost not all that important. I mean, it helps you interact in your game. You need an intellectual level. But what's really important is how you change at the being level, because that's where you go up. That's how you level up. That's how you get your points. It's all at the being level. Your intellectual level doesn't level you up any. You're not changing anything. You're not gaining there. So you have all this intellectual thing. Okay, I can intellectually understand this whole scheme, and I get it, and the virtual reality, and I can intellectually do the whole thing. But if it never causes me to grow up any, what good is it? You see, it hasn't done anything. So it's not that important what happens. Remember, I say this a lot. What's important is what you do about what happens. How do you react to that? How do you deal with it? That's where all the value comes from. So the what happens is not itself the key thing. Now, in a sense, you can say, yeah, well, what happens is key, because what happens is what gives me the challenges in order to do the doing that helps me grow. So it's important in that sense, but it's not fundamentally important. Okay, so you do things that help you grow up. So one of the things you guys are doing is making a movie. Why are you making a movie? Because you think it's a really cool idea, and you'd like to help a lot of other people see this cool idea about reality. I mean, this is neat, right? I mean, all the time you're growing up, your parents say, "Stop playing that stupid video game." And then it turns out you're in a video game. This is a video game. You're playing it, you know?
You stop playing the video game,
You stop
Mom
playing
and
the
Dad.
video games.
Yeah. So you see, it's a really cool idea, and younger people who play a lot of video games can kind of get this in a more intuitive sense than other people, because they kind of understand, just the way we've been talking. You know, you think of yourself as the elf in the game, and suddenly it's like, oh, yeah. But if you never played those games, and I tell you that, it really wouldn't compute. You see, if you've never been a gamer, you've never done any of that, the virtual reality thing would kind of fall flat, and it would be hard to grasp.
Yeah.
It's easier for you to grasp because you've been there, you've done that.
Right.
You've run your elf through, you've made his decisions for him.
Right.
Sometimes they were good ones, sometimes they were bad ones, and you see it makes a difference. And you realize it's not really what happens. It's not that a monster jumps out or that another player runs over and starts bashing you or whatever. It's how you deal with it. That's where you learn from, right? That's where you grow. Just stuff happens because you're in this place of all sorts of things. You know, you've got all the computer characters that do whatever they do. Maybe the storms or the rivers or the trees or the mountains or, you know, the monsters or whatever. But then you got all these other things with free will running around, other players.
Yeah.
And they can be helpful or they can be hurtful or they can bash you or they can give you something. You got all that stuff to deal with. And because there's so much of it and it's so interactive, there's no way to really plan or determine exactly what is going to happen next.
Right.
So trying to worry about what's going to happen next is not really all that relevant. Just get in the game. Do what you do, make good decisions, and when the stuff happens to you, deal with it in a way that you get closer to your goal. You see, that's kind of the way you play the game. You don't sit around in World of Warcraft thinking, well, if a monster jumps out behind that tree, you know, now what am I going to do? And Well, you may a little bit, but mostly you don't go through it that way. You just walk through the woods, and if something jumps out behind a tree, you deal with it.
Right.
And if it kills you, well, you go back to the graveyard, you get up and run back out. And that's about the way it is here. Well, okay, there's a lifetime gone. Well, we'll go back and, you know, do that again.
You know, after I had this like moment a couple of days ago where I was thinking about how does low entropy consciousness, high quality consciousness, empathetic relationship, how does that look like? And the vision that came to me in the universe or so on, and the vision that came to me was this thing of guides, guiding guides, guiding guides, guiding guides, guiding guides ad infinitum. You know, just as far as it could go. And
what does that sound like? Sounds like a fractal, doesn't it?
Exactly, right? Exactly. This fractal, this empathetic fractal, or this low entropy fractal. And following that, so
good.
This is an assumption on my end here, but I was guessing, and especially from what you've shared about your out of body experiences, my favorite line I think was, "If you hang out anywhere long enough, someone will give you a job," you know.
Yeah.
So, which is always true. So I was thinking on this, and. So let's say that, you know, you've done the Earth PMR human game long enough that you've demonstrated or become, you know, this low entropy, high quality consciousness being. Mm-hmm. My intuitive guess is that you move on to like a guide ship kind of role where you help others get to that level. Is that accurate?
Well, there's a couple of things you might do. I wouldn't think you'd probably end up in a guide role. You could do that. It's not that the guides are the next step up. A lot of guides don't know a whole lot much more than you do. It's what you would probably do. Let's say you get good at this reality and you become a low entropy being. The next thing is that it's not just about you. Okay, you've had that success and that's about you, but now you need to share. Now you need to help others. Now you need to become kind of a beacon of light for other people. So your next thing to do would probably be to come back here, but come back here in a sense where you help other people.
Mm.
You shed some of that light. You share it. So first is to learn yourself. Get out of the playpen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then second, you crawl out of the playpen. Then it's to help some of the other ones get out of the playpen. Right. But besides that, you're also growing yourself. You're growing now in a different way, in a different perspective. You're growing as a teacher. You're seeing things in bigger pictures, which is different. So you're out of the playpen and you're running around in the house, and you're helping the other kids figure out how to get out of the playpen. And then eventually the house becomes pretty well known to you, and then you get out of the house, you see, and then you help other people maybe get out of the house. So you're right. It goes on. There's a series. It is a fractal process. But just in this virtual reality itself, there's a lot of different roles. It's not like everybody here, is in daycare.
Mm.
There are lots of people here also that have been around a long time and that are here in a helping capacity. People that, and they may be somebody, that makes a big splash, like who? Buddha, makes a big splash, right? Even how many thousand years, we still talk about him, right? He makes a big splash, and a lot of people go that way, or any number. We could name a lot of people like that fit in that, or or a Gandhi, or a Martin Luther King, or somebody that does something that inspires a lot of other people. Could be something like that, or it could just be, the little old lady that lives in a neighborhood that's just really kind to everybody. Somebody that everybody just cares for. And when you were 6, you went over to her house and she gave you cookies.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of a person, that just is nice to people. Well, that helps us grow too, because when we run into people who are nice to us, it helps us be nice.
Mm-hmm.
When we run into people who are not nice to us, it helps us to not be nice. So just having people in the world that are nice, you see, just sharing who they are is a very positive thing for everybody that runs into them. So it's, you get, as you grow up, you become helpful to other people in all sorts of ways. You don't have to be a Buddha. You can be a little old lady that serves cookies to kids in the neighborhood, or works in a food line down in Salvation Army, or does whatever, and it's not so much what you do, but it's what you bring to it at the heart. It's not the cookies. It's the little old lady's smile. It's the way that she's anxious to help you. The way you just feel so good when you're around her, you see. That's what it is. It's not really the cookies. It's not really the meal you get down at the Salvation Army. It's not that. It's not the physical part of it. It's the interacting with that love, with that caring person. That's what helps you grow up in a positive sense. So you can come back here and serve and grow both at that level, because there's a whole lot more to learn that way in helping, just in working on it on yourself. Now, if you get to the point that you think this particular virtual reality is just not challenging you anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that's almost hard to imagine. I mean, look around at all the challenges we have here, but it's just not challenging you anymore. You can go to different virtual reality that has a different set than this, maybe one that isn't quite so much in elementary school. You can go to a different place and just learn a different rule set, a different kind of thing. And what that does is it puts you in a different game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going from World of Warcraft and going over and playing Sims, right? Totally different concepts. It's not about bashing and war and violence anymore. It's about making a happy little home, and getting a job and raising children. And it's a whole different mindset. But you can play that game for a while, and you can learn things there that you'll never learn in World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn, you'll probably do more learning of responsibility in The Sims than you will in World of Warcraft, because responsibility isn't a big thing in World of Warcraft. Power is.
Mm-hmm.
You learn to use power in the World of Warcraft, but you learn responsibility, man. And there's different places. So it's the same consciousness still trying to grow up. But when you put yourself in a whole different context,
Mm-hmm.
then the challenges are all different. So you had a whole different set of challenges. So now you're a master of World of Warcraft, and you go over to The Sims, and you're not too good at it. You forget to put a ladder in the swimming pool and all the children die because they can't get out. You're just not very good at thinking about other people. You're just thinking about force. Well, I got them the damn swimming pool. What else do they need? Well, they need a ladder. So you have to start thinking differently about what you're doing and what the point is. There are other reality frames that are different than this one, and it's not that they're, better or worse. They just put you into a different context, which means you have a different set of challenges, ways of thinking, ways of being, and you can grow up there too. But just this one itself, you can milk for a long, long time because there's always need for helpers, for people to come back and teach and to help. That's always something that there'll be to do. I don't know that we'll ever run out of that need. Mm. It's like the elementary school always needs good teachers.
Wow.
You see? Wow. So it's not that you're just going to get out of this one and it's not that you graduate from this reality and go to another one. What you go to next isn't necessarily more advanced. It's just different in the sense that it gives you a new set of perspectives and challenges, different ways of thinking and being. And then you can apply your low entropy learned here, there. But it'll be different challenges. And when you get a different setting, you get a different, you'd be surprised how much of our learning is, becomes, I don't know what we say, like habit.
Right.
You get to the point that you're now just working on habit rather than really being challenged because you've beaten all the traps, you've beaten all the bosses, and you're, I don't know what it is, you're a level something or other, and you're a big shot and whatever. And it's not quite so interesting anymore, Now, hopefully they'll put another expansion unit that'll raise the levels up and give you more challenges. But eventually you can run out of it. But you go to a different game, a different virtual reality, and it doesn't have to be more advanced or less advanced. It just has to be different so that you do different things. For instance, you have a yogi, and he wants to remove himself away from the tiresome, low-quality world. So he goes, sits in a cave, right? It's where he can meditate and be undisturbed by people who are always greedy and need something and violence and, the world sucks. So I'm going to go sit in a cave. And I'm going to sit in that cave and I'm going to meditate and it's going to be just pure spiritual bliss and this and that. Okay. And 15 years later, 10 years later, I emerged from the cave. I've had all this time. I've just been in, bliss and meditating and so on. And suddenly I find myself where you guys live in New York. Okay. Whole new set of challenges, you see. The world's different. He wasn't used to rude people in his cave. He wasn't used to, loud noises and bangs and people knocking him down. And he wasn't used to having to pay rent in his cave. And he wasn't used to having to have a job to pay that rent in a job that he really doesn't like doing for people he really doesn't want to hang out with. You see, he's been so used to kind of having it his way and it's quiet and it's peaceful and it's him and his mind. Well, he may fashion himself. He may think that he is very low entropy because he never gets angry. He's never upset. He's never whatever. And then suddenly he ends up in your neighborhood. He's angry. He's upset. He's got all these people that are intruding on his life and and he can't deal with it. All right. So did he get out of one game and go into one that was, more challenging, a more refined, a higher level game? No, but he went into one that was different. Yeah. He went into one that had a whole different set of challenges. And suddenly it's not about just having, sitting in bliss and contemplating, the largeness of the reality. Now it's about having to get to work on time when you really don't feel like it and would rather not go. But you have to because otherwise you'll have to sleep in a park. And, he's got a different set of things to have to deal with. So, you can trick yourself into thinking that you're really advanced when you're only really advanced within a very limited context. You see? So that's what you get out of moving to a different reality frame or even coming back here mainly to teach, to help, to be that kind little old lady with the cookies or to be the Buddha or something. You see, it's a whole different context than when you're just trying to grow yourself up. So the challenges get different. Everything's different. So this reality can keep most of us busy and occupied indefinitely for a very long time. You know, the teacher to student ratio needs to be higher in an elementary school. You know, you can't have 50 kids, you know, you can't have 50, 6-year-olds in a class. You just can't, you know, you'd need at least 3 teachers, you know, to deal with that class, because you'd be, you know, wiping somebody's nose and taking somebody else to the bathroom when all hell breaks loose somewhere else. I mean, you'd just be overwhelmed with dealing. Well, we need a lot of teachers here because this is an elementary school. So you need lots of people, and still, you know, the little old lady that lives at the corner that's nice to children, you don't think that as being much, but that's a lot. She could affect, you know, lots of children in a very positive way that affects how they grow up. People who have never met any kindness whatsoever grow up pretty hard and grow up pretty self-centered. People who have experienced a lot of kindness and have gotten a lot from other people, you know, want to return that. They just feel like that's the right thing to do. So it changes you. You know, people like that make a big difference, and you can have them stacked all through your life. You know, not just the lady at the corner, but some of them is your aunt, you know, your Aunt Sally, and, you know, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your brothers and sisters. You know, it's all these people that you deal with that give you so much of what you are, and that helps make you what you are. So in a sense, everybody's a teacher and everybody's a student, you see. So here we are. We're all teachers and we're all students. We all help each other. We all learn together. And it's not like you're in elementary school and you want to graduate, you know, and go to, you know, middle school next. It's like, man, I can't wait till I get to middle school. They're all just different opportunities in different contexts for you to exercise your intent and either evolve or de-evolve. You know, you always have that free will. It's that choice. So as long as there are choices that require you to kind of stretch out and grow to meet them, then you don't need anything else. That's all you're going to get. And whether you're in the cave or in New York or in PMR or some other PMR isn't really that important. Okay, so it's just as long, you just have challenges, and it's hard not to have challenges here. You know, the Buddha had plenty of challenges here. You know, so did all the rest of the kind of the famous spiritual teachers. You know, they had plenty of challenges here. And the ones that we remember are the ones that met most of them well. The ones we don't remember are the ones that, you know, didn't do so well.
Here's a question. With this metaphor in particular, with your metaphor in particular, is there anything, like, for example, one of the things I've realized from being exposed to you and what you've mentioned is that there's really no need to shove this idea, at least like simulation hypothesis, life is a video game, etc. Psi. There's no need to really shove that in people's face. There's no need to put, you know, like make billboards in the sky, and, you know, it's just not necessary. It's the point is to become a different being, to evolve, yes. Right?
Exactly right. That's the core thing.
Right.
But it is important to help other people have opportunity to grow.
Okay.
Now, if you push it in somebody's face, they're not really going to learn much from that. If they're not ready, this is something you have to be ready for. Mm-hmm. If you're not ready to, you know, to see a bigger picture, you just won't see one. Yeah. If you're a scientist and you're not just ready yet to decide, you know, to admit that maybe your theory of reality, you know, has some flaws, then, you know, you're going to invent dark matter to cover that up. You know, if you're not ready, you won't go there.
Right.
So the reason they have to have dark energy and dark matter, they're not ready to take another step that goes beyond, you know, the present scientific beliefs. And as long as they're trapped by those beliefs, then there's going to be dark energy and dark matter, and, you know, all that stuff is going to be there until they can break out of that mindset, break out of those beliefs, because they're maintaining those beliefs. And that's, you know, so you do want to give people opportunity, like making this movie.
Right.
No, you don't want to round people up in the street, force them into the theater,
right,
and make them sit and watch it, you see. But if you just offer it, those that see it and go, wow, that's neat, I'd like to learn more about that. This really talks to me, you know, it's something about my life, I really can relate to this. Then there's more, you know, there's books to read, there's videos to watch, there's other things to do. Mm-hmm. And that then kind of helps wake them up and give them a path, a way to go explore their new awakeness. And that's a very big gift if you can do that for somebody, but you can't push it on anybody.
Right.
You can just make it available. And if you make it available so that it's fun, then that's good, because then everybody can have some fun and a few people can actually learn something important. You see, the ones that are ready. But if they're not ready, they're not going to get it. So there's no sense trying to push it on anybody. But making opportunities, that's good. See, it's a good thing to make opportunities. But that's why, like in my books, I come with the attitude of, I don't want you to believe this.
Right.
Just read it. If it rings your bell and you resonate with it, fine. Pick it up and go. If it doesn't, and you say, oh, what a bunch of crap, well, then leave it alone. It's not like, well, if you think it's crap, you're wrong. And you need to try it again, because this is good stuff. And if you don't get it, then there's something wrong with you. See, that's the wrong attitude. That's, I know you don't, and you have to see it my way. But if you're not ready, it's okay. Just, toss the book, let it go. Maybe some other day you'll be ready. People who are ready will grab it. They'll reach for it, just like you did. See, you started hearing bits and pieces of this, and then you got pieces of the book, and then you read more, and it's like it pulls you in because you're ready to learn more. If you're not ready to learn more, you push it away. And if somebody tries to shove it at you, you do the opposite. You go the opposite direction. You're actually hurting people by pushing them further away from growing up. So no, we don't push anything on anybody. We don't push anything in anybody's face. We give them something that is fun, is interesting, entertaining, maybe exercises their brain a little bit, makes them think a few thoughts that they've never thought before, kind of open their mind a little. And then after that, it's up to them to get what they get out of it or not. You see, but that's kind of the way it goes. The whole thing has to build inside of a person of their own accord. You can't build it inside of them. They have to create it has to make a connection inside of them, or it's no value to them. And maybe some other thing would be of value to them. Right. Maybe instead of understanding the virtual reality thing, they would just love to go play with a Ouija board or, the I Ching and cast fortunes and stuff. And maybe that would amuse them. And maybe that would open a mind to something maybe a little bigger. Well, how does this thing work anyway? How does this I Ching, I got some hexagrams and they were really pertinent to my life, maybe there's something to this. And, maybe, see, then they might open through that. So just because they leave one thing alone and maybe go pick up something else, it's not like they made the wrong choice because that one thing they left alone was the truth. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. They do whatever they do whatever comes natural to them to do. And again, it doesn't matter what, it matters how they deal with what they're doing. So they learn from wherever it is they are and they go forward from there. And it has to be under their own steam. So that's kind of the idea. We make opportunities. You make this movie, it provides a lot of opportunities for people who never would have even thought of these ideas. It introduces something for them, and some percent of them, it'll resonate with them and they'll go want to learn more. Another percent, it won't resonate at all, and they'll think it's the biggest bunch of baloney they ever heard. Those guys are wacko. You see? So that's okay.
Yeah, that's going to be the most fun.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. They're just not ready for this information yet, and they'll either maybe next time, maybe next lifetime, or maybe they'll get interested some other way. Who knows? A lot of times people don't like to do anything different. They don't like to do anything new. When 70% of all the people they know are doing it, then they'll have to do it too.
Right.
You see, but until 70% of all of the people they know are doing it, they're not going to do anything crazy like that. So part of it just builds of its own accord. The more people who get interested, then the more people who can get interested, because it lowers the bar. Initially, the bar's higher. Right. The only people who are going to get interested are people who are really different. But pretty soon, if it gets common, then people can get interested who really aren't all that different. And by now, you've gone mainstream, you see. And once you go mainstream, then it's the thing to do. And people will be doing it whether they want to or not, because they're just following the herd. And maybe they'll learn something too, or maybe not, as they're ready. But what we want to do is lower the bar to the entrance ramp, make it easy for people to know that it exists and to be exposed to it. And that's what you're doing with your movie. You know, you're lowering the bar to the entrance ramp to grow up, find meaning in life, you know, and you know, it works that way. I have every day, you know, of all this email I get, you know, at least, you know, 10 or 15% of them are telling me things like, this changed my life.
Right.
You know, thank you so much. This changed my whole life. You know, I used to be this and that and other. Now I see, you know, what I was doing was all counterproductive, and I see what's important and what's not. And it's made a huge difference. So I get, you know, there's a lot of that. Now that's not the 90%. You know, there's a not everybody feels that way, but a lot of people do. And all of those people will influence dozens of other people because now they'll be nice to children and give them cookies, you see, and it'll just help make somebody else's day because they've learned to be nice and to kind of share the light. So that's the way it works. So it is important to do things like the movie you're doing. It's not like nothing's important. We don't have to do anything. Let's just sit and, you know, react. You need to get out there and do things, but you have to do it with the right attitude. I'm helping lower the bar. I'm giving people opportunities. I'm doing something that's fun, because if it isn't fun, it's like, come in here and suffer through this film, you know, maybe you'll learn something. That's not going to play, you know. It's got to be something that, wow, this is neat. And so you make it fun, you make it interesting, and then let the chips fall wherever they may. You know, you've done your part. You can't make them have any particular reaction to it whatsoever. I need to give them the opportunity. You can't learn anything for anybody else. So that's the idea.
We did get a really interesting question.
Oh yes.
From I hope I'm saying her name
Dolores
right.
Torres.
Dolores Torres. I think I'm probably saying it really wrong. But she sent us a question that she wanted us to ask you. In what area of research within science does Tom think we will see the most convincing evidence that can no longer be thrown under the carpet, which will help mainstream science transition to a new paradigm whereby consciousness is accepted as being fundamental? There's a follow-up right here, and I really like this one more, actually. Should the scientific method be modified so that subjective experience is accepted as a form of evidence, consciousness itself being an instrument of exploration, through using weak objectivity? And then she mentions Bernard Desperiant. I think it's French, so I'm saying it all wrong. But that I thought was really interesting. Should the scientific method be modified so that subjective experience is accepted as a form of evidence?
Yeah, well, very good questions. This person obviously knows a lot and asks good questions. The first one, it's hard to say where the break will come. You know, it's like you kind of waiting for something that grabs the scientists' attention and they say, this is real. Okay, here's the evidence. Well, there's lots of real stuff out there. I mean, for instance, take a look at Pear Labs.
Right.
Okay, the P in Pear is Princeton.
Right.
Come on now, you know, this is not somebody selling snake oil on a corner street. This is Princeton, you know. This is where Einstein worked, you know. This is Princeton Engineering Research Anomalies. These are all high-priced, you know, high-paid credentials, you know, long list of credentialed people, and they're showing that mind effects matter. They're showing that they can use their intent and modify, you know, statistical distributions and other sorts of things. They've been doing it for at least 15 years, maybe longer. They have research is given a grade based on its statistical significance, right? If you do something, you say that, well, you know, my thesis is that, you know, it'll work like this and it worked like that to a statistical significance of, you know, and what that means is that statistical significance says that our result wasn't just random. We weren't lucky. We didn't get this result just because it just happened to turn out that way, you know. So that's what that means. Well, at Pear Labs, their statistical, you know, significance is like 1 in a billion that what they could have done just happened. You see? All right, they've got all these results. What's the probability that, you know, they just got them? You know, it was just bad, you know, just luck that they got them, just luck that they changed these distributions. 1 in a billion. Nobody does research at 1 in a billion. If you do 1 in 100, that's considered pretty good science. You do 1 in 1,000, it's very good science. You do 1 in 10,000, it's like a fact, it's God's word. You do you do more than that, and the statistic is, it's just, you can't argue with it. This is 1 in a billion is their statistics for the stuff that they've done. Their research is immaculate because they know that nobody would believe it. Right. They know that it runs counter to the, belief, the scientific belief that runs the center of science. So they went out of their way to make sure that everything they did was, as scrubbed and as good quality, good science as could possibly be done, much more than most experimenters would. And they're from Princeton. Mm-hmm. They're PhDs. They're in academia, and they can't get their papers published. Ooh. Mainstream journals won't publish their papers. You see? Why not? Because it's not mainstream. It doesn't uphold the theory. The same reason it doesn't uphold the theory that says we have to have black, black energy and dark energy and dark matter. That's there to uphold the theory so that they don't have to change the theory. Well, this breaks the theory. If you can use your mind to change physical things, then wait a minute, where are we now? Right. What happened to the to get us to the scientific method? Scientific method says that anybody anywhere can do the experiment and get exactly the same result. Wait a minute. It depends on what you think. It depends on your intent and your mind. That's what they say at Paralabs. Oh, well, that doesn't work anymore then if everybody just can't do it the same thing, and come up with the same answer. That there's a mental factor here. There's intent that changes the results. Scientific method kind of has a problem now, doesn't it? It doesn't work anymore. So we don't throw the scientific method out and say the scientific method is bogus, throw it out. What we say is that the scientific method is relevant, or it only works in a certain part of reality. Okay, and that's the hard physics part. That's the part where the uncertainty is very small. When the uncertainty is very small, then it works fine. Okay, scientific method is a good way to separate the wheat from the chaff when you're dealing with things that are low uncertainty. Okay, you drop a ball. It's not high uncertainty as which way the ball will fall, right? We know which way it goes, and we know how fast it's going to accelerate in that direction. We know these things. There's very little uncertainty with them because we have the rule set that determines these things. That's the way our reality works. Just like when your elf gets held underwater, he'll drown. That's just the way that reality works. It's the rule set. You know that will happen. Hold that elf under the water long enough, and he will drown. Mm-hmm. You see, it's the rule set. So we have rule sets here, and when you're in that low uncertainty part of the rule set, which is what we call the hard sciences, then that scientific method works really well. As soon as you get into what we call soft science, psychology, sociology, things like that, right? Economics, they have to do with people. And what do people have to do with? Intents. They have minds, they have intents, and suddenly you can't get the same answer twice no matter what you do. Different experimenters do the same experiment, at a different time, even with the same people, they get different results. Nobody can repeat anything. Well, does that mean all the soft sciences then aren't science? They can't do anything that's any good because there's too much uncertainty? No, of course not. There's science. There's a lot of science you can learn in psychology and sociology and economics. There's a lot of good information and process there that's repeatable and dependable, but does it fit the scientific method? Not really. They try very hard to make it. They do double blind and triple blind and all sorts of other things trying to eliminate the intent because people just don't know what's going on. So they can't have an intent to do it because it's double blind and the people doing it and the experimenters and nobody knows what's going on. So there's little intent that's focused one way or another. So they try methodologies to make it less uncertainty like that. But anyway, the problem is that there is a human element in it, and that gives you uncertainty. And people do change the results of the experiment just by their intent. So you can do an intent different times and you get different answers. That's why the placebo effect works. Oh, I've got this great pill. Here, take that pill and it'll cure you. And it does about 35% of the time. Matter of fact, it does generally better than a lot of the medicines that we have, or at least as good as the medicines we have. So I've even heard some people say that most of the medicine we have still is working by the placebo effect. So anyhow, why does that work? How is it that how is it that what you believe and what you think is going on affects your biology? That's impossible. How could your attitude affect your biology? Your biology just follows rule sets, right? It's just atoms and molecules and things, and they're just like a machine. It just does its thing. What you think couldn't have any effect of that. Well, obviously it does. There is a placebo effect, and it's well known and well documented. And is it science? Well, yeah, it's valuable. If you can't beat the placebo effect, you can't market your drug, It's not just some effect that we push off in the side someplace. There's a psi effect, if you will. Mind affects matter that's mainstream. There is one that's mainstream. People use it all the time. It's required. It's part of the law. It's a psi effect. Okay, there we go. But so why didn't everybody say placebo effect? My God, it's real. Okay, we got to change our paradigm.
That took me a second to understand for a minute. I was like, what's a
it's
psi
pretty
effect?
funny that there's
the
a law regarding a psi effect.
There's a law regarding a psi effect that's an unacknowledged psi effect. Wow.
Right. So why doesn't that break it open? Why doesn't that blow up the dam and let the water flow? And people say, well, hey, there's a placebo effect. That tells you right there that mind affects matter. Intent affects health. It affects the way your organs are. It makes your cancer come and go. It makes other kinds of things happen. And the psi effect isn't just that people believe they feel better. It's not like you're tricking them into thinking they feel better. It's not a psychological thing. It's a physical thing. Their attitude affects the state of their health. And, and they find that all over. Doctors with good bedside manner have, better stats on helping people get well just because they care. They're empathetic and they're whatever. And that person comes out with a positive attitude. This guy really knows what he's doing, is trying his best for me. This is going to work, and you come out with a good attitude rather than the doctor that, treats you like a piece of meat, on a conveyor belt going by his station and says something and you come out kind of depressed and you don't feel any better at all. And you figure the damn pills he gives you aren't going to work. You just come out with a real bad attitude. You're going to not get well. That's going to make you sicker. Well, they know that. They know the placebo effect is a very strong effect and that it really changes physiology, changes health. Well, mind over matter, that's psi. Mm-hmm. Physics and science will tell you that's impossible. It doesn't happen. Can't work. Yeah, well, there it is, you see. So just because you have a psi effect that is accepted doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to blow open the gates of people will say, well, psi effects are real. You still have most of your scientists walking around saying, psi effects? What psi effects? There are no psi effects. Psi effects don't exist. Mm-hmm. That's a bunch of mush-minded people who are dreaming stuff. Placebo effect? Oh, yeah, that's real. You see? Well, what's that called? It's called denial. Okay, what's dark matter called? Denial.
Cognitive dissonance.
It's all the same thing. You get to a point and your theory doesn't work anymore. You ignore it or you make up a story. You see, well, the placebo effect, basically you just get ignored. Oh, yeah, we know that's around, but yeah, that's just the way it is, and we accept that, but let's not talk about it.
Yeah, that one's no biggie, whatever.
Yeah,
it's whatever.
So that one just gets ignored. So the ones that they can't get rid of, they will ignore. So now the question says, well, what kind of thing would happen that would make the big breakthrough? Well, it's not so much, to answer the first question, it's not so much where the big breakthrough has to come from as it is whether or not the people, the majority or a greater number of people, whether they'll deny it or not. Mm-hmm. There's been lots of things have happened with good research. I just took Pear Labs as an example because they're kind of high up in a Ivy League institution with all the credentials and academia and so on, and they can't go anywhere. It's the same thing. So here you say, well, no scientist has ever done anything like that. It's just, little old ladies with parrots and wobbly tables and dark rooms. And it's not, it's scientists doing good, careful work. And it doesn't get traction because the scientists as a whole aren't ready yet to admit that they have to go to a bigger reality. They need to see a bigger picture. They need another paradigm shift. I mean, we've had this before. Newton brought in a big paradigm shift. Then quantum mechanics and relativity brought in big paradigm shifts. But now we're kind of stuck there.
Right.
We're stuck at that point, and because the next big paradigm shift is bigger. It's a couple of order of magnitude bigger than those other ones. Those other ones were just, a better understanding of the physical world. Now we're going to go beyond this physical world. Now you got those two elves there, and the other one says, "Well, where is this guy with the, with the joystick? Explain that to me again." Fredkin says, "Oh, he's an other." Right. That's others where the simulation comes from, and they go, "Yeah, right." Other. What kind of foolishness is that? There's Fredkin, another scientist, and he's a pretty hotshot scientist too. He's not just your everyday scientist. He, has a pretty good string of credentials behind him and places where he's been and a good reputation. He's been saying since, the 1990s that this is information. It's a virtual reality. So, it's not just, little old ladies reading tea leaves and, when is somebody going to believe that works? It's, we got scientists doing hard science that say this is a virtual reality. Now, Fredkin doesn't say that other is consciousness. That's another paradigm that has to happen before that happens. But I think where we're going to see it and where it's really going to come from, it isn't going to be that somebody's going to do a psi experiment that nobody, can not agree with.
Right.
It's not that this big psi experiment is going to make everybody believe it. I don't think that's what's going to happen because we've already done that hundreds of times, hundreds of places. Mm-hmm. Like I say, it's part of our law. Yeah. It's part of our culture even, and it's still ignored. So that's not where it's going to come from. I think where it's going to come from is in the physics community. Of course, physics are the guys in charge of reality, right? They're the they're the gurus in defining reality, the high priests that tell us what reality is. Mm-hmm. They are more and more coming around to our reality just being information. Mm-hmm. And that's because their science, their particle physics, their quantum mechanics keeps telling them that, keeps shouting it. Everywhere they go, they get this slap in the face and says, it's just information, stupid. If you just see it as information, then everything works out. Whoops.
Yep.
A little fuzzy on the picture there. Yeah, I know. I can see myself just fine. You look a little pixelated.
I got my phalanges going on right there. Let's see.
So we're just running through a rough patch in the video. There, it's better.
Cool.
Yep.
No good? How about now?
No, it's pretty pixelated. I don't know. Is my face as pixelated as I see yours?
No, you're looking all right actually. Mm-hmm. Let me see. What's this button?
Okay, that's better.
That's better.
That's a lot better.
All right, great.
Okay, just run through a rough patch, I guess. Skype.
Yeah, Skype
does that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Skype is one of those throwaway words.
So anyway, I think what I'm hearing now, as I see more and more scientists, I almost see them all just weekly talking about how reality is information. Okay, reality is information. That is really starting to become almost a majority view.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big step. Reality is information. Now, there's not that many that are saying this is a virtual reality. Mm-hmm. That's still in denial pretty much. But when you say reality is information, that's almost the same thing as saying this is a virtual reality. What is a virtual reality? It's a reality created by information, right? So when they say that this is information-based reality, they're basically admitting logically that this is a virtual reality, but they still don't want to say the words.
Right.
So once they get used to it, that this is an information-based reality, and that's what the science is telling them. and many more. I run into people all the time, and they say, "Well, all that virtual reality stuff, I don't know about that," but I agree with it. It is based on information.
Mm-hmm.
And, you kind of roll your eyes and go, what's the difference? What's the difference between those two viewpoints? Well, there's an emotional difference between the viewpoints. You can say that, reality is information, and that's okay. It doesn't make you want to run and hide. But when you say it's a virtual reality, suddenly you've gone into territory that frightens you. So step one, I think, is going to be getting the majority of physicists to see that their reality is primarily information based. And that's coming along very quickly, because everywhere they look, that's what they're getting. That's what they're seeing. They're realizing that all the old concepts of particles and things don't really work anymore. These little billiard ball particles, zinging around in our space just doesn't work. I was reading, or I was watching a video of some physicists that were out looking for the Higgs boson particle, and they were trying to explain. They did a little video. They were researchers out at CERN, and they were doing a little video, and they just casually mentioned the thing. They say, well, we have these electrons, and they're doing such and such, but you have to realize that electrons don't really exist. They're just points. They're just points of energy. They're points, and they don't have mass. They have the property of mass. And they're going through all this stuff, you see. And these aren't, people. These are people in the mainstream. These are people. So they're realizing that their old models are just models, and that the models really aren't working that well. They're outdated models. So they're seeing that it's just information. Well, electron, that's one of our basic particles, right? I mean, that's why we have this, this video going here. So all the electrons zinging around in a wire someplace. What? Electrons don't really exist. They're not really particles. They're just points of energy with properties of mass and so on.
Everything.
But this isn't a
particle.
virtual reality now. This isn't a virtual reality. We just have information. So that's kind of where we are now. But eventually, when it gets to where they can kind of say this to each other out loud, and it doesn't scare them anymore, then the emotional part will start to die down. They'll get used to it. It's like getting in a ice cold swimming pool. First, just the feet go in, and you sit there for a while with the feet in, so you work up the nerve for the next part. Well, it's like that. They're seeing that reality is information, and they're going to have to just wait till they work up the nerve to get the virtual reality. But as soon as they get the virtual reality, then they're going to be in Fredkin's spot. Well, where's it being simulated? Where's the server?
Right.
Where is this other?
Yeah.
And they'd have to, then they get to what Fredkin, well, I don't know if Fredkin said this. The other guy, what's his name? British fellow. Anyway, he made the statement, and I think Fredkin did too, is that a simulation cannot compute itself.
Right.
A simulation doesn't write itself, program itself and then compute itself. It has to be done in other, and other has to be outside of the reality created by the simulation. Oh no, now you see our universe isn't all there is to reality. There's something other outside our universe. Outside our universe, this is the physical universe. Everything physical is in our universe. Oh no, this other thing is not physical. You see, just like we're not physical to the elves in World of Warcraft. They're outside of our reality frame. They're non-physical. So once they do that, now we have scientists who believe in the non-physical, you see, and that our reality is a subset of a bigger non-physical thing. That scares the hell out of them right now. They don't want to go there. Just saying it's information about as far as you're going to get. But eventually, the logic is there. It's like you can't have one without the other. There really is no difference in being information and being a virtual reality. Do we need to stop?
Are you okay?
Are you recording video as well as audio?
Yep.
Good. That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Because I hope what we're doing ends up on YouTube.
Oh,
sure
that's
will.
the plan. That is the plan.
Yeah, I'm giving you a lot of stuff that I've not said yet to people before, and So you've got a scoop here.
I kind of
Yes.
intuitively sort of got that vibe. Actually, I was really excited. I was actually really excited about this because I've noticed right away that like, wow, this is different. This is not the shtick.
Yeah.
This is not the shtick. That's great.
Now you look like some characters out of a virtual reality right now. You're all pixelated, and you look very much like you came out of about a 20-year-old virtual reality with box head people.
We're Atari.
Yeah,
We're the
you're
Atari brothers.
Right.
Hot damn.
Space Invaders.
Classics are the best.
I love that. Oh, that's just too sweet as a pun. Let's see right here. How do we look now?
Pretty bizarre, yeah. Definitely not real. Not in this reality.
I was gonna say it's good to meet you, even though it's through a virtual.
Yeah, this is
Thing.
Max's first time.
No, I was gonna say it's nice to meet you, even though it's through this virtual thing. But then I
But then
realized
we're
if I
like-
met you in person, it would still be through a virtual thing. So I guess this is just as good, right? I mean,
It's not bad.
Did you want to call back to clear that up?
Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah, try that because you get a different line and that may work better.
Alrighty. 1 sec.